Hello, Alphas. Welcome back. Tonight, we stand on the edge of something deeper than revenge, more lasting than recognition, and colder than any apology could ever reach tonight. We confront what the world refused to admit about us. We confront the storm that made us and the silence that tried to erase us. They didn't think you'd survive. They laughed behind their polished teeth. They fed on your hesitation. They circled like vultures waiting for the moment you'd finally give up and rot like they expected. But you didn't. You didn't just rise. You scorched the ground behind you and kept walking. You were never given a place. You were never handed a path. You carved one with bleeding fingers and fire in your chest. They built gates to keep you out. You built a battering ram of will and tore down their illusions brick by brick. And they never saw it coming because they believed the scars made you weaker. They never imagined they made you indestructible. They thought pain would quiet you. They didn't know it was your war cry. They tried to chain you with their doubt, and you turned their chains into weapons. Do you remember how they looked at you when you dared to dream bigger than they allowed? Like a joke, like a warning, like a mistake waiting to happen. They wanted your dreams, small, manageable like them. They wanted you tame and grateful and unseen, but you chose to want more. You chose to burn bridges rather than bow. And you were right to, because there's no kingdom worth kneeling to if it demands you silence your hunger. You weren't born to be one of them. You were born to break the mold that built them. There's a reason you felt out of place in every room that demanded you dim your light. There's a reason you couldn't pretend to care about the things they worshipped: comfort, security, approval. It's because you weren't made for their tables. You were made to build your own, to flip theirs when necessary, to make them realize you never needed their permission to rise. And tonight, you remind them exactly who you are, because alphas don't beg for respect. They carve it into the bones of history. They say vengeance is hollow, but they've never felt what it's like to take your pain and forge it into a blade and make your enemies kneel. Not with violence, but with proof. Proof that you outlasted them, outpaced them, outshone every expectation they cursed you with. You didn't just survive. You built a throne from the ashes they left behind, and you sat on it, not to gloat, but to show every other broken soul that yes, you can turn your ruin into rain. Yes, you can be the villain in their story and the hero in your own. They'll rewrite the past. They'll say, they always believed in you. They'll say, they saw potential, but you know the truth. You remember every locked door, every forced smile, every time they told you to be realistic. But realism was just their name. For fear they called you reckless, for refusing to stay in line. They called you arrogant for wanting more. They called you dangerous because you didn't need them. And they were right about one thing. You are dangerous. Dangerous to the world that lives in silence. Dangerous to the small minds who fear change. Dangerous to the ones who feed on doubt, because you've stopped feeding them tonight. We don't apologize for the chaos we caused. We don't ask forgiveness for the noise we made. We own it. Every scream, every mistake, every time we shattered their comfort zones with our truth. Because growth is violent, rebirth is messy, and the path to power is never paved with politeness. We weren't made to be liked. We were made to lead, to disrupt, to command. And if the world isn't ready for that, they'll have to learn or burn, because we're not slowing down. Now, you gave them an ending they never expected, because they thought you'd fade out quietly. They thought you'd lose steam. They thought you'd turn on yourself. But instead you evolved, you sharpened your focus. You became something they can't control. And now they're scared because they realize you were never trying to prove anything to them. You were proving everything to yourself. And now that you have, you're unstoppable. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about legacy, about building something from the ruins they left you in, about showing others what happens when you don't give up, when you don't compromise, when you look at the impossible and say, "Watch me," because that's what you've done. You gave them an ending that tore their script in half and wrote your name in flames across the sky. There were nights you didn't think you'd make it. Nights when the weight was too heavy, when your mind was a battlefield and your heart was a graveyard of broken hopes and voices telling you to quit. But you kept going, not because it was easy, but because you had no choice, because giving in would mean they win, and you weren't about to hand them that victory. No, you dragged yourself forward, bloodied, unrecognizable and stronger than you ever thought possible. And now, here we are on the other side of everything. The thought would destroy you, and you're not just alive, you're dominant, you're feared, respected, envied, because you did what most can't. You became who you were meant to be without asking for permission. And now you walk into rooms and the air changes because they feel it. They feel the weight of your story. Even if they don't know it, they feel the power that comes from surviving your own war and refusing to be a casualty. Don't you dare shrink now. Don't you dare soften your edge to make them comfortable, because comfort was never the goal. Power was, and you have it now. Not because they gave it to you, but because you took it, because you earned it in the dark with no witnesses, no applause, only grit and rage and vision. And tonight you stand tall, not because you've reached the end, but because you've become the storm that no one can ignore. You gave them an ending they never expected, because you were never the weak one. You were the one waiting, the one watching, the one becoming while they laughed, while they doubted, while they plotted. You were building a kingdom they couldn't see, and now they have no choice but to watch you rule it. And to anyone out there still waiting, still doubting, still feeling like the end has already been written, hear this. No one gets to write your ending but you. Not the ones who left, not the ones who lied, not the ones who couldn't see your worth. Their vision is not your verdict. Your future is not bound by their fears, and your pain is not your prison. It is your forge, and you are the weapon. Hello, Alphas. Welcome back tonight. We don't just celebrate. We declare, we ignite. We own every part of the journey that got us here. The broken pieces, the betrayals, the endless nights, because every one of them was a step toward this moment. And this moment is yours. Burn it into memory. Let it echo, because they will remember you now. Not as a whisper, not as a failure, but as the legend who defied every single expectation. You gave them an ending they never expected, and now they'll never forget you. And now that the fire is lit and the dust of their doubt has cleared, what do you see when you look around? Not those who stood beside you, not those who cheered only after your victory. No, what you see is the battlefield, the ruin, the silence that tried to suffocate you. And you remember that every inch of ground you stand on, now you bled for, it wasn't given to you, wasn't inherited or handed over with trembling praise. It was taken with grit and defiance. You didn't win because you were lucky. You won because you refused to lose. They underestimated the war inside you. They thought, because you were quiet, because you were alone, because you had no crown or title, that you had no power. But what they didn't realize is that silence isn't weakness. Silence is a storm, gathering its strength. Silence is strategy. Silence is survival. And when you finally spoke, when you finally moved, they were too late to stop you. and too weak to understand you. You didn't follow the script. They wrote, you didn't crumble under the weight they placed on your name. Instead, you rewrote the narrative with your scars as ink and your failures as fire. You didn't ask for a spotlight. You became one, and now their shadows don't reach you anymore. Now they chase you, hoping to understand how someone they buried came back, leading a legion of their own, and that legion, it's made of those like you. The misunderstood, the underestimated, the ones told to wait their turn while the world passed them by. But now the wait is over. The turn is now, and we take it with no apologies, no delay, no mercy, because we've seen what waiting brings. We've seen how promises rot when placed in the hands of cowards. So we stopped waiting. We started creating, and that creation shook their walls, and they'll say, you changed, like it's an insult. They'll say, you used to be soft, used to be kind, used to be small, but you didn't change. You evolved. You grew armor over your heart, not because you hated love, but because they kept trying to kill the love inside you. You didn't lose your light. You learned how to burn with it instead of be burned by it. You became your own fuel, your own spark, your own sun. And now, they glare at you and call it arrogance, but what they really see is freedom, and that terrifies them. You gave them an ending they never expected, because you didn't disappear. Like they hoped, you became a force, like they feared. Not a warning, not a lesson, but a reckoning. And in that reckoning, they see themselves small and trembling and weak, while you stand tall, forged in pain and powered by purpose. And when they try to rewrite the past, remember, they only rewrite what they fear. They only lie about what they can't defeat, and you are the proof of everything they failed to destroy. Look around you, Alpha. This moment isn't an accident. It's not luck. It's not fate. It's the consequence of relentless will, of quiet defiance of every moment. You looked failure in the face and said, not yet, because you knew something they didn't. You knew your breaking point was never your ending. It was your origin, your beginning, the place where all the pieces came together, not in perfection, but in purpose. And now your purpose is clear to be the fire in a world of ash, to be the storm that cleanses, not just destroys, to be the voice that roars when silence is expected, and to never again make yourself smaller, just to be safe, because safety was the cage and you shattered it. You escaped, and now that you've tasted freedom, there's no going back. They'll come for you with praise now, with offers, now with hands outstretched, pretending they never doubted, pretending they always knew. But you'll see through them because your eyes were trained in the dark, and you recognize false light when it tries to blind you. You don't need their validation because you already have something more powerful. Proof living, breathing, undeniable proof that you were right to trust yourself, even when no one else did. There's a graveyard in your mind, filled with the names of every lie they told you, every fear they planted, every label they tried to chain you with, and you walk past it now. Not mourning, not weeping, but remembering, because the dead don't define you, but they remind you of what you escaped, of what you defeated. And that reminder is fuel, because when the next wall rises, when the next trial calls, you'll already be ready. You don't need to prepare. You are the preparation. You are the culmination of every battle fought in silence, of every night survived in tears of every step, taken with broken bones and bruised spirit. You are the result and the warning, the prophecy and the storm. And when they ask you how you did it, you won't answer with a smile. You'll answer with silence, because the answer is written in your survival, and they were never listening anyway. You gave them an ending they never expected, because you didn't just rise, you transcended. You went beyond what they could measure, beyond what they could understand. You became an enigma, a legend, a nightmare dressed as destiny, and they can't box that. They can't cage it. And now they realize they never could. And that's why they're afraid. Fear is respect misunderstood. And now they respect you in hushed tones, behind closed doors, in stories whispered at midnight because no one wants to admit. They once mocked a giant while it was still sleeping. And now the giant is wide awake and walking and building and roaring. And nothing they do will ever be enough to erase the steps you've taken. Don't slow down. Now, Alpha, don't doubt now, because this isn't the end. This is the expansion, the beginning of everything you were always meant to become. And yes, the path is hard, and yes, the world is cold, but you are harder and you are colder, and you've already proven you can thrive in the worst of it. So imagine what you'll do now, in power and clarity, in full control. The world has a habit of trying to bury anything that makes it question itself. But you can't bury fire, you can't drown thunder, and you can't silence a mind that has finally tasted its own strength. You gave them an ending they never expected because you refused to be what they wanted, and now they have to live in the world you created without their permission. And isn't that justice? Not revenge, not retribution, but evolution. Your presence is their consequence, your voice is their reckoning, and your legacy is the ghost. They'll never escape, and you didn't need to break them to win. You just had to survive and shine and lead, and now, their own fear. Does the rest Alphas tonight, we remind the world that we are not the broken, we are the builders, the rebels, the kings and queens of our own design. We didn't need a seat at their table. We built our own halls, carved from the bones of failure and lit by the fire of our vision. And we invite no one. We summon no one. They come to us, or they are forgotten. This is your time, your voice, your world. And anyone who thought they knew your limits now knows better. They know your name. Now they whisper it, they fear it. They remember it because you gave them an ending they never expected. They called you angry as if it was an insult, as if rage wasn't earned, as if fury wasn't born from being silenced, overlooked, underestimated. They told you to calm down, but calm never built empires. Calm never moved mountains. You weren't made to be calm. You were made to burn, and they don't like that because your fire lights up everything they tried to keep hidden, their weakness, their pettiness, their fear. You are the spotlight now, and their shadows have nowhere left to hide. They told you to be patient, but patience was their code word for be silent. For wait, your turn, for don't disrupt the order, and you knew that order was never made for you. It was built to benefit them and crush you beneath it. So you stopped waiting. You stopped asking, and you started taking. And now they act shocked, like they didn't spend years sharpening the blade. They expected you to fall on you, took that blade and turned it into a crown. And now they bow, whether they like it or not. They said you were too much, too loud, too intense, too different. But that was the point, wasn't it? You weren't made to blend in. You weren't made to be palatable. You were made to disrupt, and they hate you for it. But they respect you too, because nothing scares a system more than someone who doesn't need it to survive. You built yourself outside their approval, and now they can't cancel what they didn't create. And when you walk now, you walk with weight. Not arrogance, not pride, but presence. The kind of presence that makes people adjust themselves when you enter the room. The kind of presence that can't be ignored because it speaks before you do. And it says, I've been through hell and came back glowing. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's not my problem. You gave them an ending they never expected because you stopped caring. What they expected. You shattered every blueprint they designed for your failure. every timeline they mapped. For your collapse, you made them. Eat their words, chew their doubt, swallow their disrespect because your success wasn't a response. It was a revolution, and you started it with nothing but grit and a refusal to die quietly. And now the game has changed. Now you are the example. Now they use your name in rooms you haven't even entered yet, trying to dissect how you did it, hoping to borrow your fire. But this fire can't be copied. It was earned in silence, in sacrifice, in suffering they'll never understand. You weren't born chosen. You made yourself inevitable. Remember that. In your darkest moments, in the next war, in the next betrayal, because they will come. They always do. But now you don't break. You don't hesitate. You absorb and redirect. Because pain is familiar, and failure is just fuel. And doubt is the echo you left behind when you outgrew their limits. They'll say you were lucky. They'll say it was timing. They'll say anything to avoid admitting they were wrong about you from the start, because the truth would cut too deep. The truth that they tried to bury you. And now, you're the one writing the story. Now, you are the ending. Now, you are the legend. And legends don't ask for permission. They don't beg for applause. They walk alone if they must. They stand tall in rooms, built to crush them, and they don't forget where they came from. Not to dwell, not to resent, but to remember. Because history is the weapon of the ones who survived it, and you survived, and then you conquered. So here we are, Alpha. The fire is still burning, and the silence is still gone, and the world is still watching, wondering how you're still standing. And the answer is simple. You refuse to fall. You turned every bruise into a lesson, and every scar into a blueprint. And now, there's no going back. There's only forward, and forward is war. It's glory. It's purpose. It's yours. Because you earned it in blood, in silence, in nights no one saw. And now, the light that follows you isn't from the world. It's from within, and it can't be dimmed. You gave them an ending they never expected. And now they live with that ending every day, every time they see your name, every time they hear your voice, every time your presence rewrites the air in a room. Because you are not just a survivor, you are the storm they prayed would never come. They built their walls high, thinking it would keep you out, not realizing it only gave you something to climb. And now you're above them all, seeing clearly, breathing freely and laughing, not out of cruelty but out of clarity, because they were never the mountain. You thought they were just a shadow pretending to be stone, and when others come to you, lost, broken, confused, you won't turn them away, because you remember what it was like to scream into silence and hear nothing back. So you will become the voice, the light, the storm for someone else. And in doing that, you become immortal, not through fame, not through glory, but through impact. Because they won't just remember what you did. They'll remember what you made them feel. You made them believe again in rising and fighting, in becoming. And that is the legacy that outlives titles and crowns and praise. That is the echo that will outlast centuries. You gave them an ending they never expected, and now you begin writing the next chapter. The one where you lead, where you create, where you elevate. And the world will try to keep up, but you are not slowing down for them anymore. Hello, Alphas. Welcome back tonight. We don't just rise, we reign. We don't just exist, we ignite. We don't just remember. We remind the world that we are here not by accident, not by luck, but by fire and war and purpose, and nothing will ever make us small again. So walk forward with no fear, no apology and no hesitation, because the road ahead may be wild, but so are you, and you've already proven that wild is unstoppable. You gave them an ending they never expected, and now you give yourself the future. They never thought you'd live long enough to see long. May you burn alpha, long. May you roar, long. May you rule. And now as the dust settles and the echoes of your journey stretch into the bones of those who doubted you, let this final truth ring louder than every lie they told you, louder than every silent room you sat in, louder than the voices that tried to tell you to be less. This is your world now, not because they gave it to you, but because you bled for it, clawed for it, demanded it. When no one believed you deserved it, you gave them an ending they never expected, because endings were never your concern. Only transformation, only fire, only forward. You didn't just finish their story, you began your own. And it's louder, it's sharper, and it's immortal. This is your legacy, not written in comfort or consensus, but carved in rebellion and resolve. You rose in the places they buried you, and now you walk not just as a survivor, not even as a conqueror, but as a creator, a force, a name etched into time. So go Alpha, go with fire in your eyes and thunder in your veins. Go as the storm, go as the signal, go as the reason someone else chooses not to break because of you. And if they ask how you did it, if they ask how you endured, how you thrived, you look them dead in the eyes and say, because I gave them an ending they never expected. And then you walk on unshaken, unapologetic, unforgettable,